T.S. Eliot's poetry is considered to be the voice of his time through the way in which the expression of his poems reflected the spirituality of the population in which he lived. This reflection is particularly displayed in Hollow Men through the imagery of hollow men and stuffed men, which is able to effectively highlight the emptiness of Eliot's own generation through the juxtaposition that demonstrates they are full of nothing. The love song of J. Alfred Prufrock reinforces Eliot's reflection that the population is yearning for something as they have lost their spirituality. Prufrock's pursuit of a lady is symbolic to Eliot's society's pursuit of spirituality, tentative but aching for something for them to believe in. The comparison which is drawn between scarecrows and men in Hollow Men alludes to their emptiness as they are filled but only with the knowledge that they have lost their spirituality. As they are only a headpiece filled with straw, they are quiet and meaningless due to their heads being filled with nothing. Without their spirituality, their lives contain no meaning, and with their lack of spirituality, they are provided with no guidance. This comparison is an example of a quality within Eliot's poetry which has enabled him to be considered as the voice of his time by many literates and scholars. In the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock, Eliot mentions "you and I," using inclusive language to draw the reader in and make them feel connected to the you, which is the society of Eliot's time. This inclusive language is continued to highlight society's search for spirituality, where it led you to an overwhelming question, which is that question of who is out there to guide them. This pursuit of spirituality leads them to a point where it is time to turn back and descend the stair. This descent being their descent down into hell. This journey for spirituality took the people a lot of time and is why Eliot repeatedly talks about time, directly linking to why his poetry allows him to be a voice of his time. In the very last line, when Prufrock realizes that his generation has lost their spirituality, he concludes that they will be fine till human voices wake us up and we drown. This being that the population does not actually need their spirituality until they wake up and realize that they have been drowning the entire time. This realization comes after the facade which was concealing the truth is broken down, and the individual realizes that they have also been wearing a disguise the entire time. Without realizing it, they had needed the time to prepare a face to meet the faces you meet, which is Prufrock being Eliot's medium through which he is able to demonstrate how the citizens of his time behaved, enabling Eliot to be the voice of his time by presenting within his poem how the people of the 1910s were behaving and keeping up a facade of pretense and that everything is okay, when actually behind the facade there is suffering and longing for spirituality. This is demonstrated when "My necktie rich and modest, but they will say, how his arms and legs are growing thin." This is outlining how the people are putting up rich facades in order to hide the loneliness and emptiness which they experience from their lack of spirituality. In Hollow Men, the people are no longer upholding this veil of illusion. It has finally been ripped down after decades of ignorance. The people are finally able to see clearly without any disruption that they need the spirituality which they have lost. Within the opening stanza, evidence for this is given as "our dried voices are quiet and meaningless," where again Eliot's inclusive language is involving his population, making him the perfect spokesperson for his time, as he has discussed their development throughout his poems. In showing how desperate the people are for spirituality, Eliot makes it really dramatic, comparing the population of a dead man by mentioning that the need for spirituality is similar to that of the supplication of a dead man's hand, which creates the image of a dead hand blindly grasping for anything to hang on to. Just these two poems of Eliot's provide many different reasons for which Eliot is considered the voice of his time by many experts. The way in which he demonstrates the population's loss of spirituality, and the way he is able to effectively highlight the way in which the facades of his society put up were able to conceal their necessity for spirituality even from themselves. To confirm this, Eliot tells us that between the desire and the existence of spirituality falls the shadow, which is the life of his society, even if the people do not realize it. The loss and pursuit of spirituality, as well as duplicity, which Eliot showcases within his poem, is able to provide a reflection on the people of Eliot's time and why he is considered a voice for it.